All right, everybody, just make sure you have your phones off during this process here so we don't get anybody confused up here or scared or, I mean. All right, I think we're ready to start. Welcome, everybody. My name is Jason Lloyd. I'm the chairman of the board for the Eagle Chamber. It's my pleasure to invite you guys all down here, and we're excited as a chamber to be able to offer this to the community here, to hear from our candidates and what's going on in our Eagle community, as well as the state. So I hope tonight we get a little bit of a strategy for you and for you to understand the candidates a little bit better, and for your vote coming up here pretty quick. So with that being said, I'd like to introduce Kenny Pittman. He's on our board, former city council for Eagle, and excited to have him moderate tonight. So with that being said, here's Kenny Pittman.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate that. The Eagle Chamber of Commerce hosts forums like this to allow voters to see the candidates and to hear them address questions of interest to the public. Our goal is to enable voters to learn about the candidates so that they can make informed decisions. Eagle Chamber of Commerce never endorses or opposes a candidate or a political party. Republican primary voters in Idaho's Legislative District 14, which includes the cities of Eagle and Emmett, will have a combined 9 candidates to choose from 1 Senate seat and 2 House seats. Senators Stephen Thane, a 5-term senator, and C. Scott Grow, a 3-term senator, are both running for re-election after redistricting placed them in the same legislative district. They're being challenged by Katie Donahue. The Republican Party winner will face Constitution Party candidate Kristen Faith Richardson and Libertarian Robert Imhoff in the November general election. Representative Gayan DeMordaunt, a 3-term representative, is also running to get reelected to position B. Is that correct? She is facing Republican challenger Josh Tanner. The GOP nominee will face Democrat Shelley Brock in November. 1 House seat is left open for new leadership. Republicans Ted Hill, Caleb Huberry, Tracy Kalish, and Mike Olson are running for state representative position A. The primary winner will run against Democrat Crystal Ivey in November. All 3 positions have 2-year terms. Added to the panel this evening are Republican candidates running for Ada County Sheriff, Matt Clifford and Doug Trauble. The primary winner will run against Democrat Victor McCraw in the November general election. The GOP closes the primary on May 17th, which is just around the corner. The candidates have agreed to a format and ground rules for tonight's forum. The format is simple. I will pose a question to the candidates, and each candidate will have 60 seconds on. Timer is at the front of the room and will give the candidates a visual signal to help them pace their responses. So you have the yellow, which is about 30 seconds, and then you have the red, which is please stop. Due to the limited time, we request candidates to comply, and if overture occurs, we may need to cut you off. The questions for tonight's forum were developed by a chamber committee panel based on research and questions submitted by the public. The audience may submit handwritten questions on index cards that are provided at your current tables. We will have personnel collecting those questions, vetted, and we'll present the questions to candidates if time permits. When you have your questions ready, if you'll just hold them up, we'll have someone from the chamber come and grab those questions for vetting. This forum is being recorded live and aired on the Eagle and Meridian Chamber Facebook and YouTube. The ground rules ask candidates not to use forum recordings for their campaign purposes. We also encourage the audience not to record the forum because we want it shown in its entirety. Finally, we ask the audience to refrain from any displays of support or opposition. Please hold your applause until the end of the forum. We want to give each candidate as much time as possible. Now we turn our attention to the candidates. Thank you all for running for office and for participating in this forum. This first question is for all House and Senate candidates, and you will all respond for this opening question. Legislative District 14 is growing fast. How do we handle growth without losing what draws us to the community in the first place? We'll start with Mr. Hill.
That's a real tough question because the only way to control growth is to deny people their property rights to sell as they see fit. So the two combined is iconic. If we want people to have individual property rights, we can't really tell them not to sell to developers. So how do you manage that and how do you legislate that? I think that is really a quandary. I've seen in Hawaii where they try to have a moratorium on growth. That doesn't work. Government trying to oversee and control growth does not work. We have to live to free enterprise, and we got to do the best we can to prepare for it and prepare our infrastructure and be ready for it because we're not going to stop it. That's just the reality. People get frustrated, but if you want to go against people's personal property rights, that's going to be the next step. Thank you.
Well, good evening. My name is Tracy Kalish, and I'm grateful to be here tonight. I'm grateful for the chamber for putting this on. You know, that is, I think, the question that we're all feeling a little bit challenged with here. You know, we see right now that Idaho is becoming this great state that great conservatives in particular are escaping the California and Washington and Oregon because they're leaving those states and the impacts of those states. And we want to make sure that we don't allow those same negative impacts come here into Idaho. But we also have to balance, as has been previously mentioned, we do need to balance personal property rights. And so one of those things that we need to do is give the tools and resources to our city government. So our county commissioners, so that they can use the tools necessary that they need, and also for our city government. So I have met and talked with our local mayors, both in Emmett and in Eagle, and they really don't want a lot of heavy legislative intervention. What they want is the tools so that they can manage it themselves. They want local control, and I support that.
Thank you. I'm Mike Olson, for anybody who can't see the sign here. But thank you, everybody, for coming, and thank you for the great question. You know, controlling growth and keeping Idaho, you know, making sure we have conservative values here is incredibly important. I think the number one way to ensure the conservative values, to ensure that Idaho remains Idaho, is you have to start at education. You have to start right here in the schools. You have to make sure that we are promoting choice in education. So that starts with the kids, because they're going to be the next generation. You know, I can tell you here, I am certainly the youngest person here on the panel, and I can let you know education was incredibly important for me not even too long ago. So that is really in the growth, in keeping Idaho, you have to focus on what you're teaching the kids, on making sure that the parents have choice in their kids' education. As for actually stopping growth, to the extent that's what the question's intended to be, I'm 100% against, you know, infringing on the private property rights. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, my name's Gayanne DeMordaunt, and I've been serving 3 terms. And I am so pleased to see so many people here tonight. I just appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight with the community. I'll tell you, one of the most important things that come, or one of the most important challenges that come, is on our roads. And we need to get from point A to point B, and the more people that are in the valley and in our area, the tougher that is. And so I have focused very in a very targeted way to improve the funding for transportation, to improve roads, both in terms of congestion and in terms of safety. And I think that's an important thing. At the same time, I would agree with the previous candidates that we have to protect our Idaho values. We know what is attracting people to our great state, and it is that flame of freedom. And that resonates with people. We have got to protect our Idaho values, and that means protecting the family. And that does start with education and family values in addition to those constitutional rights that we have.
Oh. Is it on? Okay, there we go. So thank you guys all for coming. My name is Josh Tanner, and that is probably one of the biggest issues I see that we're facing right now is growth. I think one of the biggest issues that we're seeing with it currently is actually that our cities and our counties do not have a lot of control over it. Our legislators have taken a lot of the power away from the cities, so you talk to cities about the roads, and they push it off on ACHD. Well, their authority was given to ACHD, and the legislator actually protects ACHD. You talk about impact fees, because impact fees are a large portion of where ACHD pulls in their funding, and those those impact fees are now, at one point in time, they were actually dedicated to the area of the impact, but currently the legislators pulled that, so now they're taking our money, that what they're taking for that impact, and they're actually passing that along to Boise and to other areas. So I think our legislator needs to back off and give the power back to the cities as well as the districts.
Thank you. Growth is a factor of decisions made at the local level. Having been on the school board for a couple of terms, West Ada, I believe in local control. They make those decisions on where the subdivisions are going to be, how much expansion they're going to do. The state should not be getting in the way of that. We know we'll be getting the growth. Our responsibility at the state level is to work with the local folks to make sure we accommodate what they need. One of the things we just did in this last session, for the first time, we've had a couple $100 million of general funds going for transportation. We approved $1.25 billion for transportation. That includes Highway 44 and Highway 2026 that are being expanded, 5 lanes all the way to the freeway, all the way to Caldwell, and extending Highway 16 to the freeway, and that'll be 4 lanes going there. We need to have the infrastructure to accommodate the growth and work with the cities and the counties to make sure that it's properly handled.
Thank you, and I hope you don't mind if I stand up. My name is Stephen Thane, and I also agree that growth is a local issue. What the state can do, though, is provide more funding to make sure that the locals get an equal amount or a fairly sizable portion of the budget. But the other part of the question had to do with our culture. There are several things that about our culture. One, it's family oriented, and we have an expectation of work. I've been working in the education system for 16 years, former teacher, and we have a cultural struggle going on there. I'm sure we'll talk about more of that as the time goes on. The parents need to have control over what their students are learning, because that's really where cultural battle is won and lost, is the classroom and in the home.
Thank you. Our next question is for the Ada County Sheriff candidates. So this will go to Sheriff Clifford. You'll be first on this one. So the question that the public would like to know is, what experience do you bring to the task of managing such a large agency, its budgets, and its personnel?
I'm Sheriff Matt Clifford, and one of the things I bring is over 2 decades of experience inside the Ada County Sheriff's Office. I've worked there almost 22 years. I was the chief of police at Eagle, my last assignment, having managed a multi-million-dollar budget there. I manage an even larger multi-million-dollar budget. I hold certificates from Post in basic, intermediate, advanced, supervisory, and management. Also, come up through the agency. We call it growing up in the agency over the last 22 years to see all of the growth that we've had. I started here, the sheriff's office, it was a much different place. The advantage that I have is I've stayed with that agency and been able to move with the community and in the community as we see all of the growth, different types of crimes, different types of technologies, different types of techniques, different types of training. That's what makes me relevant.
My name is Doug Trouble. I have 32 years experience in law enforcement. It spans 3 agencies down in San Diego County. I worked for the Chula Vista Police Department for 9 years. I was in the street team down there, which was a proactive essence gang unit. And then I came up here, did 9 years with the sheriff's office, and then 15 years with the Ada County Prosecutor's Office as an investigator. Rank and title are not necessarily indicative of leadership. Leadership must be demonstrated. And throughout my career, I've been proven to be a natural leader, chosen to be the first in many new assignments, like the street team I mentioned, the gang unit, which I submitted the proposal to form the first gang unit in Ada County. I was the first SRO at this school when it was built, as a matter of fact. And so I've developed policies, the best practices, and I've been someone that's made my superiors, frankly, look good. Just because you're in a position doesn't mean you're a leader. Leadership has to be demonstrated. And I have a whole career of that. And I have a lot of forward-thinking ideas that will respond to this population explosion we're having, in addition to the Marxist influence on policing. I look forward to sharing those ideas and demonstrating my leadership as we move forward to this population growth.
Thank you. Now, the next question is directed to the candidates for District A. So we'll start with Mr. Olson, and then it'll just go to your left. So this question is, what unique quality makes you the best candidate for this position?
Let me check. Okay, it's working. So I am a business owner and a tax attorney. Did my master's in tax law at Georgetown. I was an upstream oil and gas tax attorney for Shell Oil, where my job there was to know the tax law better than the tax authorities. And as a business owner, what I am used to is, I'd say, getting the job done. You know, you can't sit there and talk all day. You actually have to get stuff done because you have paychecks to make. You have bottom line to make. You have to actually run a business and make sure that everybody there is able to be successful. So what I'm able to do is I'm able to set objectives. I'm able to set clear timelines, and I'm able to make sure that I'm always moving towards the goal. And I can tell you, it may not be linear. Sometimes it goes this direction, sometimes it goes that direction. But as a business owner, I'm used to running with the punches and making sure that we're going to, in the end, accomplish our objective. I think that's the biggest difference that I'm able to bring to this seat. Thank you.
You know, these questions I find are always really difficult because you're having to kind of suggest that you're better than someone else. And I see unique qualities in each of the candidates up here tonight. But what I will say is this: I'm the only candidate that has been actively involved here locally on the local level with the Republican Party championing your rights. And I think that is a really key consideration. You know, I've been involved, especially as we came through COVID. We saw unprecedented amounts of government overreach with the vaccine mandates, and I championed a resolution to ensure that we protected our individual rights. Election integrity is another big issue. I worked locally to develop standards to ensure that we have fair, free, and honest elections post the 2020 presidential elections. Those standards were read into the congressional record. In addition to that, here locally in the city, I've gone and championed our Second Amendment rights and asked the city to declare the city of Eagle a Second Amendment sanctuary. So I have a record in this race because unfortunately we are all none of us have served in the legislature, but you know where I stand on Second Amendment, you know where I stand on election integrity, and you know where I stand on medical freedom. So for those reasons alone, I have a record.
Well, I think I bring something unique, probably different. From my military career, I have 3 combat tours, living in combat. Besides that, leadership in big organizations. I was in charge of an air wing with $1.5 billion of assets, $200 million budget. We interdicted drugs in the Caribbean, and my squadron actually interdicted $1 billion of drugs coming through the Caribbean. I also did IED interdiction over in Iraq, all that combat set, all that management. But I think the other thing I learned was working with the other people, working with Muslims. I worked with the UAE, Saudi Arabia, coalitions with Qatar, and I also worked coalitions with Japan, Australia. I have an extensive experience working with teams, working joint, working difficult situations and difficult projects and finding solutions and getting there in a decisive manner.
Thank you. The following question is going to be for Gayanne. This is for you, and then we'll ask Mr. Tanner something different. But what have you done in the legislature that you're most proud of?
Thank you. You know, one of the things that I'm very most proud of is one of the first things I did, and that is to increase transparency for your government. And when I say your government, I mean every level of government. I passed a bill that required that whenever any government entity, small or large, was considering something they were going to vote on, whether it had to do with money and funding or not, they had to notice it on an agenda. They had to let you know as constituents and citizens when they were taking a vote. Imagine that was not even, that was not possible previously. I also required that any agenda had to be posted electronically as well as the regular posting. So that transparency is critically important for you to be able to engage with the decisions that are being made on your behalf. And you know that government that is closest to the people is the most local and most impactful. So that transparency and accountability is critical. Thanks.
And okay, so the next question will go to Mr. Tanner. Mr. Tanner, what is something that you will do different than the current incumbent?
I think one of the biggest things is actually to fight for you guys. We have a lot of legislators and as well as the sitting incumbent that voted for Facebook to come into our backyard. They gave them a $50 million tax cut to come into our backyard, and that's something that I don't like, and I would definitely not vote for. I know it wasn't directly directed at Facebook. But it was several large corporations, whether it was Microsoft, Facebook, Google, is where it was written. That is something that to me is just unacceptable. As well as I think any company that our state gives money to, and our state gives a mass amount of money out, those companies should be 100% open and for the public financially. If they're going to take our money, we should be able to see where that money is going and what they're using it for. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next questions will be directed to the senators. We'll start with Mr. Thane. If you can pass that microphone down for me, Josh. So the question that we have for the senators, what unique quality makes you the best choice to represent the new District 14?
Great question. Unique quality is I listen and I think I have a natural law, is the belief that there's an equal law first. The problem is we don't know what that is. So in order to find it, we have to have legitimate discussions one with another to try to find win-win solutions. I want win-win solutions for our families. One of the main things I focus on is how to transfer the responsibility and power of government back to families, giving families choices. I've done that through the Advanced Opportunities, or some of you might know the Fast Forward program. It's the largest school choice program in the state, with around 40,000 kids taking advantage of it, taking dual credit, AP tests, all.
My profession has been as a CPA, full-time small business owner, small business consultant, and I serve as the vice chairman of the Taxation Committee, where we deal with all the tax issues, the property tax issues you're concerned about. We're trying to deal with those, everything else. I serve on the Joint Finance Appropriation Committee. We have a $13 billion budget. You think about that. That's all your tax money coming in here. And one of our key responsibilities as legislators is to be good stewards of the money that you have sent us. I also serve on the Economic Outlook Committee, where we forecast the revenues. I deal with forecasting the revenues, the tax law that brings in the revenues, And then I deal with all of the agencies of the state of Idaho to see what they want to accomplish. One of the things I initiated was transparency. When we give them money, they now have to report back to next year on how they spent the money. They didn't have that before. The transparency is important, and fiscal conservative is who I am.
Thank you. We'll now ask the candidates for Ada County Sheriff. Mr. Drabo, we'll start with you. What is your top priority as sheriff to keep Ada County safe, a safe community for all?
Readiness, and that's affected by the war on cops, which is an extension of the cultural revolution that is enveloping the entire country. Teaching implicit bias training is CRT for cops, critical race theory for cops, and that needs to be eliminated so that the deputies in the field feel confident doing their job, not doubting themselves in a certain situation because of this little bug put in their head of worry that their motives will be considered to be less than pure. We need deputies to know that their sheriff backs them. We need effective, proactive law enforcement. And throughout this country, this is a problem. The war on cops, the media would have you believe that the police are the Klan in blue, and I'm offended by that. It's an honorable profession. And we have a professional agency now. I want to take it more professional, more effective, more proactive. When we have this population explosion, it's imperative to defend our quality of life and also our rights. Our constitutional rights have been stepped on for 2 years with this overreaction to COVID, and the sheriff needs to know what his oath means and interpose on your behalf to defend your individual liberties, arresting people for not wearing a mask or failure to appear, and dragging them through the same door that they were denied entry is a violation of Article 1, Section 18 of the Constitution.
Hold your applause, please. No applause, please. Thank you. Mr. Clifford. I can. What is your top priority as sheriff to keep Ada County a safe community for all?
I think our top priority is going to be great leadership in our agency. In order to, I've always said that the sheriff is pretty unique as having being an elected official. You have to have your leadership trickle all the way down to the line staff. So empowering deputies is definitely in a top priority. We do about 67,000 calls for service that are proactive calls for service in the county. That's our deputies going out in the community, interacting with, looking for crime and trying to dig things up in order to keep our environment safe the way it is today. Most of you probably moved here because it's a conservative environment and it's a safe and it's a clean environment. So empowering those deputies to go out and do good work with good leadership is my priority.
We're going to go back over to our candidates for District A, and we'll start with Tracy Kalish. Hand that down to her. So the question for all three candidates: what are your top priorities in your first year in the legislature?
This one I am really passionate about, and that is we have got to rein in government overreach, whether that is at the federal level or whether that's at the state level. We saw unprecedented overreach during COVID, and I have been very concerned to see we had citizens in the state of Idaho to actually be arrested for exercising their constitutional rights and freedoms to worship, and churches were closed down. We saw liquor stores remaining open. This should not be happening in the state of Idaho, should not be happening anywhere in the United States. But taxes is another issue we have to address. We have so much government bloat here. We have got to rein in our spending. And we also still have some work to do on election integrity because we still have areas that we have vulnerabilities in our system. So I would like to champion continue to protect our individual rights and taxes and of course, election integrity.
Thank you. We'll go to Mr. Hill.
Well, I'm going to stand up on this one because the thing that gets me fired up and the whole reason I'm running is the attack on the Constitution, and that's what motivates me. I did in the military. It's supposed to be not apolitical. It became political. I made it political. People would say, Lurch, you can't say that. And I did all the time. It's happened in the military. It is the overwhelming construct of every topic we're talking about is the Constitution. If we follow these lines, it covers the mandates, it covers everything. That's my passion. That's why I'm running. And that's when I want to do my part. Unrelenting. This alert, you're unrelenting. Yes, I want to take this fight. I want to bring it to Idaho. And that's why I'm running.
Thank you. Absolutely. I'm with Ted here. This is an area that I get incredibly passionate about. First of all, I mentioned earlier education and its importance in Idaho. There is no reason that the market should stop at the school door. I can tell you, teachers, students, parents, everybody responds to incentives, and we need to provide educational choice so that we can actually get responses to incentives at the school level. Now, I can tell you with my background as a tax attorney, that is going to be the area where I can help the most. That's the area where I'm the most knowledgeable. We need people who are going to have good tax policy. It needs to be neutral. It needs to be simple. It needs to be low taxes. And we don't need this after the fact refunds, send refunds, spend 3 months of the controller's time to just send out refunds for taxes that we had no idea about. You didn't get to plan for it. You should know your tax rates in advance. They should give you that notice so that next year you can plan your investments accordingly. Nobody is going to increase their amount of investments to increase the economic activity when you go ahead and say after the fact, oh yeah, we're going to lower your taxes last year.
Appreciate that. Okay, if the candidates would remain seated. Thank you. Yeah, they probably didn't see you, Ted. No, yeah. Yeah, thank you. Well, let's turn our question now to the candidates in District B. We will start with Gayan once again. What do you believe your district needs most legislature in the next 2 years?
Thank you. I believe in limited government and lower taxes. And I continue to believe that those are the most important things in our district. We have got to get government off the back of people. We have got to lower the regulations and eliminate some of this government overreach. Again, I would echo what Tracy said. We have had unprecedented intrusion into our personal lives and our businesses by government. And the federal government is not the only one guilty of this. State government is as well. Those regulations that cause you to have to pause and go down a list of things that you have, check with the government, open doors of your business, that's a problem. When you have to go down a checklist from the government regarding your kids' education, that is also a problem. So we have to get the government off the backs of the people. Now that includes lowering taxes. We made a historic tax cut. I understand. If you're shaking your head, you feel, oh.
Please, hold on. Josh, I'll reread the question for you. What do you believe your district needs most from its legislator in the next 2 years?
Oh, no, to do their job. Their job is actually to protect us and our liberties and our freedoms. And what I found spending the time I've spent down our legislator, there's a lot of them that spend most of their time protecting themselves, fattening themselves up, rubbing shoulders, building themselves a nice cush job. And their job is to fight for us. So for me, I'd say that's one of the biggest things is actually to fight for the people. When it comes to taxes, people don't realize, a lot of people don't realize it, but we are in the top 10 percentile when you actually add income tax, property tax, and sales tax together comparably to other states. That's unacceptable. We're supposed to be a conservative state, and yet we are extremely high in taxes. You saw what happened with the COVID and the school closures and everything else. Again, even with the doctors, they said it was ineffective. It wasn't the right thing to do, but our legislators did not stand up and fight for that until it was too late. So thank you.
Thank you. The next questions, if you can hand that mic down to the senator candidates. The next question is directed to the Senate candidates. We'll start with Mr. Groh. Many voters feel that the Senate is much less conservative than the House. How can you help change that?
Thank you for the question. It's a matter of perspective. What is conservative? In the Senate, we are involved in looking at the issues and doing what we feel is best for all constituents. You know, there's an idea that if you're loud and noisy, then that's what needs to happen. But there are many, many people out there working at their jobs, raising their families, who we hear from that are not asking us to stand up and make a big fuss at the session, but to do what we feel is right. So we are elected to represent you, all of you, not a small vocal portion. And that's our effort in the Senate, is to do just that.
Well, I'll stay seated, though I don't think I'm tall enough I get out of the range, but um, that's an interesting question. I'll point out, though, that on the vaccine pause mandate bill, it passed the House and the Senate, vetoed by the governor. When the Senate tried to overturn the veto, we got 21 votes, so we had about 7 senators that voted to sustain the veto, which was a disappointment. Um, but the other major thing is an example I'll give is Common Core. The House voted to get rid of Common Core, but they didn't really. 2018, 20, I don't even know what year it is now, but we needed to get rid of Common Core. You have to replace it with something else, and that's what the Senate did. Is we said this is what we're going to replace it with, and this is the process. So sometimes it's easy to say something, but you actually have to do it.
And we will turn to the Ada County Sheriff candidates. We'll start with Mr. Clifford. What are the most pressing law enforcement issues facing the Ada County Sheriff Office at this time?
Well, I'd say there are two. One of them is practical operational, and the other one is a new crime that we see with fentanyl. So we'll start with fentanyl very quick. Fentanyl is coming through our borders rapidly, our southern border rapidly, something that I think we're going to be battling for a while, and we need a lot of resources into it if we can. We also need to help those southern border sheriffs if we can, because quite frankly, the federal government is not giving them the aid they need to make that border safe, and so that fentanyl is getting to us. The other quick issue would be more operationally. We're growing at a rapid pace, so it's my job to work with the commissioners and try and explain to them what are our needs for people and the equipment we need in order to service the public and give you the correct public safety so that you can live in the community without fear of walking down the street and being a victim of crime, or going to the grocery store and
The question was the two major.
Am I back on? What are the most pressing law enforcement issues you feel the Ada County Sheriff's Office is facing at this time?
Well, again, being proactive, and that's a cultural issue. We need deputies that feel confident doing their job and doing it safely. I mentioned this, the CRT for cops, implicit bias training. When someone detained, your dressing behavior, when someone detained is moving around on you and you have this doubt that equates to analysis paralysis, can get you killed. I've been in situations, especially when I was in the gang down in San Diego. I know the realities of how dangerous this job is, and I want my deputies to know I have their back, even if the optics are bad. Bad optics is not conclusive of bad police work. The very nature of the job is confrontational. So we need a culture that is proactive and oath-centered. I mentioned the arrest of people at the steps of the courthouse. An oath-centered culture will not yield to a judge's edict to arrest someone for not wearing a mask. My oath is to the Constitution, not a judge. And I want a cultural shift in the sheriff's office so we protect our individual liberties and our quality of life.
Thank you. This next question is going to go once again to all the House and Senate candidates. And so each of you will be responding, and we're going to start this question with Mr. Olson. If you need me to repeat the question because I will do that, so just ask. So the question for all House and Senate candidates: what do you think is the best way of returning power to the parents and the families regarding education?
I think I've talked on this subject, so I might be familiar. I can tell you, I think the best way is to promote choice in education. Absolutely. I have, my preferences there. I have organizations that I donate to. I believe in, in Republican values and Idaho values here, and really promoting teaching of the founding. But I can tell you, everybody has their own version. And I think to the extent we put that choice back into the hands of parents, we put vouchers here in Idaho so that parents can make that choice and take their students to the school of their choice where they think that their kids are going to get the best education. That's going to be the most surefire way to make these schools responsive. I've heard from parents who've gone to the parent-teacher, or not the parent-teacher meetings, the school board meetings over in Boise. And for months, they were not even allowed to speak. Talk about not having a voice there. I can tell you, if you have the dollars, those schools, Your voice is going to be heard loud and clear. And I don't see why Idaho isn't there yet.
One of the things that I think that we don't talk enough about is the fact that we have a bloated education system in our state. And what I mean by that is we have Education Inc., as I like to call it. They control our school systems, our school boards, and we see that we cannot get the tax dollars to follow the children. And so we need to look at school choice. I think school choice is something that would not only increase opportunities for students, but it would allow parents to have a more effective and active role in their children's education. If they want to seek private school, they want to seek public charter, any of these different things, I'd like to see us actually take a look at some of the things that are being done. Like, for instance, in Florida, they've just introduced some new school choice programs this last legislative session. But we seem to be stuck in wanting to allow the school boards to control the kids. And what we're seeing out of that is some ideologies that subtly emerge, just like they are in our libraries. When we're seeing, just filth starting to show up in our libraries, we're seeing just a whole different,
Sorry, I'm the mic Nazi. I apologize.
Well, I think this is easy. We all agree. This is parents' choice. We have to, parents have to decide what's best for their kids. If it's going to be public school, private school, or homeschooling. And parents have to have complete control over what is being taught our kids. That's an absolute, has to happen. And it's become more prevalent now with the insanity I'm seeing across the country. I mean, what we can do from the state level is, mandate that. That can't happen. I always say, hey, there's got to be a flag in the front of their classroom and they do the Pledge of Allegiance, not some other crazy flag they want to put up there. We go ahead, and this is America. We're going to do the right thing. We're not going to indoctrinate our kids to do any of these other crazy things. And so all this, make the parents, they got to have full control over what happens in these schools.
Oh, great. Okay. So school choice. I have been in the trenches of school choice long before my name was ever on a ballot. I was one of the founders of North Star Charter School. You may have seen the news this last week that they were ranked 88th in the entire nation out of 17,000 schools of choice. And so that was U.S. News and World Report. So I was in the trenches long before I was ever at the State House. Now, at the State House, I believe in parents' choice and have advocated for that, bringing the bill this last session with Representative Dorothy Moon to bring ESA's Education Savings Account to Idaho. Fortunately, that stalled out, but I will tell you that is one of the driving forces of me wanting to return to the State House, is to give more choice to parents. We have great options in our community, in part because North Star started, then we had a magnet school, then we had another copy, Rolling Hills of charter school, that we are up to 66 charter schools in our state, 10% of our kids.
So school choice is definitely something that I think every parent should have a decision with. My kids have gone to private school because I think our public education system is failing us. But for some reason, our legislators keep thinking the solution is just keep throwing more money at it. Currently, we're spending over 50% of our entire budget at education, and we're not seeing improvements in it. So my biggest problem with it is that when you look at it comparably to a private school is about a quarter the cost of what you're paying in public. So money is not the problem. The problem is actually releasing all the regulations, all the red tape that is being pushed upon, and giving the power to the school boards, to the administrators, and actually giving those powers to the parents themselves. I think that is the only way that we're going to actually solve this problem. Thank you.
We'll pass that down to Mr. Groh.
Thank you. The Idaho Constitution mandates that we're to provide education for all of our students, and I think that includes our homeschoolers and those that choose to be in charter schools, et cetera. In our own family, we've had our kids in all of those. We've had homeschooling, we've had private school, and we've had public school. I think parents have the right to choose what they think the best venue is, and that the state ought to be supportive of those efforts. One thing I'm big on is continuing our career technical education. We need to help kids and make sure that kids and parents understand through career guidance counseling that this is another option for our students and that not everybody has to go to college, get a college degree. One of the things that we did during this last COVID uprising is, as legislators here in Ada County, we had a letter that went to the Meridian Ada School Board stating the concerns of all of the parents that we've received relative to masks and the vaccinations, all that kind of thing. I received an email from 4,000 parents today telling me how much they appreciate it.
Thank you. That's a great question. I'd like to talk about how I view the role of parents in education. I feel like it is their responsibility. Public education system should cater to the parents and ask them what they would like to see out of it. There are 4 things that I've done in public education that have given students and parents choices. One of them is the Advanced Opportunities or Fast Forward program, provides $4,125 to each student, basically an in-school voucher. The Innovative Classroom, just this last Monday, through that law, the Emmett School District voted to have the Hillsdale government class be taught in the Emmett School District this next fall. So we can talk about what the founding fathers intended. The Self-Directed Learner Bill was passed this year, which allows students that are doing well in school to negotiate flexible attendance and a flexible access the system in a flexible manner. There's many more. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll return to the Ada County Sheriff's candidates. And we'll start with Mr. Trebell. We kind of talked about or touched basis on this when you answered your last question, but what will you do to decrease the illegal drugs coming into our county and the ability for our kids to obtain illegal drugs? And as you know, the fentanyl and opioids are rampant currently.
Yes, they are. And ISP has a very good drug interdiction program. So I would, of course, consult them and say, is there room here to partner up? Ada County Sheriff's Office has drug canines, and of course, the state police do as well. So I think it's certainly a logical step to take is to partner up with them, see what we're doing now, what we can do better. I realize it is a huge problem, and it's a problem that extends beyond Ada County. So we have to partner with contiguous counties and the state police and just evaluate what we're doing, and maybe double down on it.
Mr. Clifford?
Well, this is probably one time that Doug and I probably are the same. I handled a drug dog for many years in the county, and we do have one of the largest canine programs in the state of Idaho. And I do agree. We do partner with ISP on occasion, and I think what we are going to have to probably reach farther outside even the Treasure Valley to really combat fentanyl, which is our latest, greatest coming up, to help out some of these schools as well to get more educational programs. I know that's not the end all be all, but at the boots on the ground level, we just have to keep those deputies investigating the drug crimes, partner with other agencies, keep our drug dog program bolstered, and make sure that we are up on the latest trends, smuggling trends, and also work with our prosecutor and our legislators to make sure that we keep mandatory minimums here in Idaho, because I don't mean to sound like something right off of a movie, but the drug cartel is a billion-dollar business and they know our laws.
Thank you. So let me see right here. Okay, we'll go to the District A candidates, and we'll start with Tracy Kalish. What have you done that prepares you to work with 69 other representatives and 35 senators?
Raise children to begin with. That one, yeah, answer that. But no, on a serious note, I have a broad background working, both here locally in Idaho with running alternative sentencing programs for the courts and probation, managing upwards of 2,500 retail locations as well for a Fortune 50 company. And so I have had to learn how to build coalitions and work that I have done specifically. And when I worked, and this came up as a question someone asked me on my website today with my Fortune 50 company, I had to implement large programs, large scale programs across a large enterprise and across different divisions. And so being able to lead change initiatives and to make sure that we can seek compromise and work through issues, those are important things to do. However, I do want to say one thing. Compromise is something that we can try to do, but never will I compromise on our conservative values. And I think we are seeing way too much compromising happening in the legislature.
We'll go to Ted.
Well, I think that I've had some very unique experience working with the most challenging coalitions in team building. When I worked with a joint team of Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines trying to work a brief for the president, that was challenging. When you can get that together between 20 06s, you can do anything. Also, working with Muslims, talk about a coalition and try to work with that. That was probably the most challenging thing I did, working with Saudi Arabians and try to come up with a solution and work through problems. That's a challenge. I think I've had some of the most tough, I would say, problem-solving, team-building experiences that anybody can probably have what I did throughout my career.
Thank you. We will turn to the District B. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Olson, my apologies.
All right, I think I get 2 minutes for that. No, absolutely. So I went through to Boise State University for my undergrad, University of Houston for my law school, and Georgetown for my master's in tax law. And I can tell you at every one of those places, you'd have group projects, you'd go ahead and have exams, and you really have to work with all of your classmates there because you're not necessarily going to understand everything. But after that, I went to EY, one of the big four accounting firms, and Shell Oil, one of the largest oil and gas companies in the world, where I brought in over $1 billion personally. By having to lead and manage a project from start to finish there, make sure that you're hitting your deadlines, that you're not missing anything, that you're working well with every part of your team there. And now with the business that I run right now, we have over 200 employees. We're in 10 different states. You have to understand all the personalities are different. You may have the exact same objective, but you guys aren't necessarily speaking the same language. So you really have to build those relationships. It's not just going to be a 9-to-5 job there. You're going to have to spend the mornings doing coffee, spend the evenings going out with your colleagues. You're going to have to build relationships, and that's really what this is if you want to get something done.
Thank you. Now we'll turn to the candidates from the District B, and we'll start with Mr. Tanner. Mr. Tanner, what will be the first item you will present or try to change if you are elected in November?
I would probably go say taxes in general. We had a property tax bill that was going to get rid of property taxes that was unable to make it very far. I very much appreciative of them looking at property taxes because that is something that every one of us is dealing with, and it's something that is actually forcing people out of their homes with. So that needs to be addressed right away. The problem I saw with it is that we were just going to push that tax over into sales tax. I think there's a lot of ways that we can actually not increase sales tax as well as get rid of property taxes. We have a tremendous amount of overspending in a lot of areas. There's plenty of parts of our government that can get shrunk to make up for that. One, you saw the surplus of $1.9 billion that somehow they spent in like 2 months. Still can't figure that one out or figure out exactly where it went, but the money is there. And we need to get that off of our backs. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to turn back to parents and families and school choice because I just think it is incredible to me that we are having to legislate parents back into the picture of their own kids' lives. The parents' voice and choice has to be the number one voice in the room. And the fact that parents were actually asked to be outside of the room of school board meetings and their kids' classrooms is really unconscionable. We see this Marxist woke rhetoric and this move and attack, this anti-family attack on our communities and on our state. And we have to push back. Now, how do we do that? We have to we have to empower parents to make choices for their kids, both in terms of education and in terms of values. We have to make sure that our curriculum is transparent. and that it reflects Idaho values. We have to be vigilant in protecting families. Thank you. That was a really soft red, Cindy.
Thank you. You hold on to that one. Let's see. We will now turn to the sheriff's candidates, and we'll start with Mr. Clifford. What will you direct your deputies and employees to focus on, and why? And how do these issues affect citizens of Ada County?
Well, with an agency as big as we are, that's a tough question to answer. But one of the biggest things that we have to focus on is public safety, protecting the public's rights and protecting victims of crime and giving them the correct services. So whether that is bolstering our trial or misdemeanor units, or making sure that we are evaluating inmates in our jail, which is the largest in the state, to make sure that that we are managing people that are supposed to be in our jail and keeping them in our jail so they're not out in your backyard committing crimes or being a threat to the public in general. But I think bottom line, what we do is public safety. Public safety means making sure that, again, we're protecting your rights, that we are being proactive and being crime fighters, for lack of a better term, and making sure that if you're a victim of a crime, that we help you the best we can and get you the right services.
We are one controversial shooting away from chaos. And I want a reputation that extends to Spokane. That you don't come to Ada County and burn it down. I want my deputies to double down on riot and crowd control. If I need to step into the woke city of Boise, I'm not stepping in to look, I'm stepping in to act. Can I talk about it? Okay, there we go. Okay, so again, your quality of life depends on a proactive professional. I don't want a police state. I want professional deputies with a heart for public service, but the courage to take action. We don't want to slide to Seattle. So the priority needs to be proactive law enforcement, lots of contacts. That doesn't necessarily mean lots of tickets. It just means being observant and having the confidence to address behavior and criminal behavior, suspicious behavior, and follow to the end. It pays just as much to be reactive as it does proactive. I can be an armed report taker and make the same money. Sorry.
Mine's not working right now either, so we'll just kind of pause for a second. While we are waiting for the other microphone, if you all have questions that you want to ask, we're getting to that portion. We want to get those vetted before they're brought up to me. So if you have a question and it's ready, go ahead and raise your hand up, and we'll have someone come around and gather those questions so they can be vetted quickly. And then we will try to get as many of those questions in as we can. There we go. Okay, there we go. Is it this side or that side? Okay. You guys have yours? We just have one. Okay, let me see who it's going to. It's going to the senators down there, so we'll hand it down there to them. Are we back on? There we go. Okay. We've spoken and we've heard a lot about education, and this question focuses on that as well. So we'll stay with it. This goes to we'll start with Mr. Thane. What are your priorities regarding education?
Well, my priorities regarding education is to re-enthron parents in the process. Where I am right now, we have quite a few bills in place to protect or to give options to parents within the public education system that they're not aware of. I don't think many of you are aware that you have a process that you can petition to get an alternative curriculum if you don't like the math or the language or the government class, that you could actually get a different curriculum. So letting people know of the options that we have put in place, because today listening from some of the candidates that they're not aware of them either. I need to do a better job. Secondly, the future, I believe, lies in micro schools, where parents will have kind of a public school, homeschool hybrid, where they can have a lot more control over their elementary school education. So that's one thing I'm going to be focusing on.
Thank you. Same question. When I was on the Meridian West Ada School Board, we had an issue that came up that the schools had actually violated the Idaho Constitution by not having the parents involved in the curriculum. That is absolutely crucial. So I made sure that they got involved. We fixed the curriculum. The local boards need to include the parents in the defining and setting of curriculum. We've got to get rid of, make sure we don't have the CRT, the critical race theory going on, the woke stuff that's going on, all of the extremist liberal indoctrination that's going on. That needs to be kept out of our schools. The parents have the right to control where their kids have their education and what that education is going to be. And we need to stand up for that and support school boards that do that, and support parents where it's not happening. When they reach out to us, we will respond and interact with those boards and encourage them to do what's right for the parents and what's best for the kids.
Thank you. Do we have some questions? We are at the audience questions now. We have time for a few. Oh, wonderful. Okay, this question is for everyone. What does it mean for you to fight for the American values and the people? What actions you will take? We'll start over here on my left. Dan, do you want to start that one?
Sure. Great. I love questions from the audience. Love constituent questions. And what does it mean to fight for your freedoms? I'll tell you, one of the things that I believe very strongly in is representative governance. It is the very thing that our Constitution and our government was founded on. One of the bills that I am very proud of is that we have brought a constitutional amendment that you will be voting on in November in regards to representative government. You weren't represented at the State House for almost 250 days. You were not represented. You didn't have a voice as $1.5 billion were allocated by appointed people, not by your representative. So I believe that one of the most important things and one of the most precious freedoms is your ability to vote and your ability to have a voice that is represented at that State House.
And we'll just go left. Yep.
So this isn't Fight Club, so absolutely, this is going to be legislation. I would say I'm running here for the House of Representatives, and the legislation that I would want to bring, that I would want to support here to fight for Idaho values are absolutely on the taxes. We need to make sure that taxes are simple to understand. We need to make sure that it's low rates. They aren't running a $1.9 billion budget surplus and then saying we're not going to lower taxes, we're going to issue refunds for past years. If you're lowering taxes, make it known in advance, make it prospective. We need to make this a great place for Idahoans and anybody who wants to come here to invest, to live, to thrive. On the regulation front, I can tell you, we've seen too much power pushed towards the governor these last few years, not just here in Idaho, but in other states. But you have Arizona, you have Florida. They have actually put out legislation. They're getting rid of what's known as Chevron and hour deference, where this takes away from the executive, where the executive is all of a sudden actually creating their own legislation and being deferred to by the judiciary.
You know, Article 1, Section 2, I believe, of the Idaho Constitution says that all political power rests with the people. And one of the things that we lost over the last 2 years is our individual liberties and rights. And I have to say, when I go out and talk to people, what I share with people is we can talk about taxes, school choice, all these other things. But I have to tell you, freedom is absolutely on the ballot. And what we saw through the whole COVID pandemic, And as was previously mentioned, as we saw appropriations take place, that belongs in the legislator's purview, not in the governor's purview. But I was also incredibly frustrated that when we saw those things happen, we did not see enough legislators standing up and going out and being a part of trying to elevate the people's voices. People were losing their jobs. Businesses were declared essential and non-essential. We can't have American a dream. We have such significant government overreach. So we have to make sure that we rebalance our individual rights and that we shrink government so we can grow freedom.
This is really easy for me because I've been fighting my whole life since 1984 when I raised my hand to support and defend the Constitution, and that has not ended. Just because I retired 2 weeks ago doesn't mean I'm done. I even got it tattooed on my arm, we the people, and I'm serious about it. This is why I'm in this. We're fighting for those liberties. We're fighting for the republic. We're fighting for our culture. We're fighting for the soul of this country. That's why I'm in this. We're fighting for that. And that's why I want to do my part for Idaho.
Thank you. We'll go to is your mic working now? Hopefully it is. Okay, we'll go to you, Mr. Tanner, and then we'll just go down that way.
For sure. So I'm just a natural born fighter as it is. I'm kind of an argumentative type person as it is. So for me, one of the big things that one of the big things going down there to fight on is the weak bills. The part of the big issue I see is we'll start out with a really great bill that'll get presented, and then we'll go to a committee, and then from that committee, it'll just get, when it actually finally makes it out of the committee, all the teeth are gone out of it. Critical race theory, that bill is in particular really frustrating to me because the original bill was great. What came out was had no teeth and was ineffective. So I think calling the legislators out for weakening strong conservative legislation is one of the big things I will do. But I think a lot of people need to remember this is your guys' seats. This is, we are only here to represent you guys. And what I saw during COVID really was frustrating to see how many people just complied and let the government do it. And I want to at least say something, Benjamin Franklin. Oh,
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Josh.
From a sheriff standpoint, we do a lot of fighting that does not mean boots on the ground fighting bad guys. The sheriffs in Idaho, including myself, we do a good deal of fighting down at the legislature, and we want to fight to keep our laws that we have here in Idaho, to keep violence and drugs out of our state so we can keep it clean and safe. We also want to fight you've probably heard me say it before, the federal creep, I call it. Those small little things that the feds do to come in and say, we really want you to sign this thing, or we really want you to do this thing, and then we'll allow this other thing. Myself, I've a number of times already over the last year, I've turned to the feds and said, no, we're not doing that. But forget it. That doesn't make any sense. It just costs the taxpayer money unless you put your hooks into me. The sheriffs in Idaho have done this, all over Idaho have done the same thing. If we fight to keep those laws, we fight to keep the federal government out of our backyard, we can continue to be the Second Amendment state that we are. I don't know any different. I'm a native Idahoan. I enjoy constitutional carry, and I don't ever see that going away if we can keep doing that in law enforcement.
The purpose of government is to secure God-given rights of the individual. Sheriffs that do not put their oath in action by interposing in your behalf render the Constitution toothless, and government is unrestrained. The oath needs to matter, or this Constitution means nothing. It's just paper. So to fight, I will put my oath in action. If the ATF wants to say you can't own an AR, Article 1, Section 11 of our state constitution, which gives you more protection than the U.S. Constitution, would require that I interpose and not allow that. Same thing with your churches closing or anything else that's COVID overreach. Our state constitution gives each of you more protection than the U.S. Constitution, and for a sheriff, that oath must matter, or your rights mean nothing. And so I will physically interpose.
Some legislators think that fighting means you stand up and make a lot of noise in the legislature, get your name on the paper, on TV, whatever else, but they never pass any legislation. Your job as a legislator is to work with other people and develop relationships so that you can pass legislation for the benefit of the people, not the benefit of lobbyists or any other group. Oregon has decriminalized cocaine, heroin, all that kind of stuff. We had a constitutional amendment that I sponsored that we got through the Senate, 2/3 vote, big deal. Working with your senators. We got 60% of the House to get that done as well. And then a lobby group came in and convinced a lot of those House people to vote against it. We wanted to put this amendment out for you, the voters, to be able to vote to keep Idaho clean, so that we didn't end up being like Oregon, and some of the noisy folks prevented that from happening. We work for you, not for lobbyists and other organizations.
Well, thank you. Many of you have come from California in the last few years, and I'm suggesting we need a mindset change. What we've been trying to do has overlooked an important piece. There are three critical elements that were present when the Constitution was founded. We had limited government embodied in the Constitution. We had free market economics that Adam Smith popularized in 1776. And we had a balance of family responsibilities, meaning they were in charge of food, clothing, housing, transportation, medical care, retirement, and education. Since the last 250 years, we've allowed responsibility and power to go to the government. And some people have given it up, others haven't. And it's the role of the family that needs to be rebalanced. We're not going to maintain limited government until we start to understand that the more self-sufficient functional families we have is the key to limited government. And that's what I'm fighting for.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Thane, go ahead and keep that, because we're going to ask, this is for the House and the Senate. So we'll skip the sheriffs when it comes to you guys. The sheriff candidates, just hand the mic down. We'll start down there and we'll head back this way. So here's the question for both House and Senate. What plan do you have to deal with the critical water shortages in District 14 and statewide?
I don't have one. I'm very concerned about it. We have laws in place, but I cannot tell you that I have a plan for that.
I met with Brent Jansen, who is in Emmett. He worked with the feds on water resources. We had a good long conversation. He and I talked about some things that we could do, and we'll be working together this next session. For Emmett, that's a critical issue, obviously, with agriculture up there. For all of us here, it's also a critical issue to have the water that we need. That's the most important resource that we have. I'll work with him and others in the state board and other agencies that we have that work on water. I know those folks, know them well. We work well together, and we'll work to do all we can with our water to make sure that our aquifer is protected and that our surface water is clean and works well for us. We also just paid $106 million, I think it was, to raise the level of the Anderson Ranch Dam 6 feet. That doesn't sound like much, but that will give a lot more water reserve in the future for us here in this valley.
So I've grown up on Idaho my entire life, and honestly, we're not at a water necessarily shortage. That it's the rainfall's not happening, the snowpack's not happening. I mean, it is a 1 every 10 year type thing where we do fall short in those. But this is the growth that is the reason for what our shortage is. We've given out a tremendous amount of water rights, and a lot of those water rights just sat not used for a long time, just tied to properties. And then we came along and we built a bunch of homes there, and we connected everything in, and the usage for that all of a sudden went from net zero to all of a sudden full use. And we've been seeing this throughout our state, especially throughout this valley. And to me, this is one of the issues, if we're really looking at this, is what will hopefully put for us to stop and potentially slow down growth is to actually help manage that. We do need to go back and look at some of those water rights that we have and what we're using it for. Are we using it for the most economical values? Are we using it for just watering our lawns, or are we using it for irrigating farmland? Thank you.
Thank you. You know, I want to start out by saying, first of all, I absolutely respect private property rights. And I guess I was a little bit surprised to not hear that mentioned. It is critical that we first and foremost recognize that. But second, there is a challenge that we are having in terms of the growth, and the suburban sprawl is impacting our water. You know, this is a precious resource in Idaho, one of our most valued resources. We have the cheapest energy. One of the states has the cheapest energy in the nation, and we count on, we saw our congressman from the other side of the state wanting to reach those dams. And that was a problem for us. So it is a problem nationally, federally, but we also have to protect it locally. So we do have to look at the growth that we're having, the suburban sprawl, and be cognizant that the farmers next door need that water too.
Thank you. To absolutely build on what Gan was saying, private property rights are going to be essential here. I've said a few times, I was an oil and gas tax attorney for Shell, and I've especially talked about the tax part, haven't talked as much about the oil and gas part, but that has to do with mineral rights. And I can tell you, seeing all around the world, the United States and only parts of Canada are some of the very unique places in the world that actually protect and preserve private property rights to minerals. And that is essential to make that first to the highest and best use. I was always told, you want to find the biggest environmentalist, go ahead and find oil under a urban farmer's property. He gets none of the money, but all of the cost. So here, what we need to do is we need to work with the private property owners. We need to actually get all the stakeholders together, because this isn't just going to be a state solution. You have to involve the mayors, you have to involve the city councils, you have to involve the counties there, and you have to, most importantly, involve the homeowners and private property owners there to make sure that this is going to be a win-win solution for everybody. I know in Emmett, there's a whole lot of talk.
Thank you, Mr. Charles.
Thank you.
So, water is such a precious resource, as we've heard it mentioned today. So we have to ensure that we do capacity planning for our water. We are seeing so much growth coming into the state, and that is taxing our water. One of the things that we need to do is work with Bureau of Reclamation and some of these other agencies to ensure that areas where we can actually raise dams, which there was an appropriation this last legislative session to actually increase water capacity storage and also to protect our aquifers. So we have to ensure that we are doing proper planning. I would also say that, water is also a national security issue that we need to be thinking about, because, it's not just our agriculture that we need to maintain, not only for economic development in the state that we need water for, but we have to absolutely ensure that we are preserving water rights and protecting individuals. First in time, first in right is a real big deal to farmers, and I really respect the personal property rights.
Well, I've lived here my whole life, and I've seen the change. I used to go down with my dad and shovel 2 feet of snow, through all the time. That's the way it was. I mean, the climate's changed. We don't have as much snow, as much water. The math is simple. Not as much water. We got to do what we can to save it, and we're probably gonna have to change behaviors. I've lived in communities where they're desert communities. You can't have big lawns. You can't have all this great expanse of lawn and green. You got to have rocks and stuff that's a little bit more manageable. We're gonna probably have to accept that. That's just the way it is. And that's probably where we're going to have to go, especially with the growth. And you look across the valley, there's no way we can support all the lawns across this entire valley the way we water them now. So there'll be a change of behavior.
Thank you. We'll turn the next question to the sheriff candidates. Go ahead, that mic. We'll start with you, Mr. Clifford. That's fine. How will you deal with the influx of migrants, drugs, sex, and human trafficking coming from the southern border?
So one thing we need to do really is partner with our municipalities, first of all. I think there's no one agency in this valley that's going to be able to tackle that problem. The local chiefs and I have been talking about trying to get a local task force just for human trafficking. Like we've said before, we're going to need to partner a lot with agencies probably across the valley to help combat the incoming drug problem. And I think the thing we forget a lot about is training. We need to make sure that we have the right training for these deputies to make sure they're understanding the local trends, make sure they have great interviewing skills. They could do roadside interview, and make sure that we give them the support they need to go out, be proactive, dig up drugs out of cars, and use intelligence to intercept incoming drugs, bolster our NARC unit, and maintain our Q9 unit.
Yep, that's a good answer, Matt, and I agree with everything he said. In addition, we have the Internet Crimes Against Children, ICAC, and Sheriff's Office has detectives dedicated to that. So as far as child sex trafficking, that's something that's being done already. We need to get into the dark web and see where the connections are locally. We've got prostitution being run out by the airport, out of hotels there. I talked to a Lyft driver the other day. That's an example of how do you develop a confidential informant? You talk to people. It could be something as simple as a Lyft driver or Uber driver. So deputies that can learn how to be proactive and have sources for information, and then develop those into leads for investigations and arrests. We have to be proactive. It's not enough to manage an $86 million budget and the largest law enforcement agency in the state. We need to change the culture, and part of that is to be proactive, learn how to dig and be real cops again, and not just reactive armed report takers. That's what's really happening down here. The agents are reactive. We need to be proactive. We need to dig, and we need to pursue evil in our county.
Thank you. We will turn back to the House and Senate. This is for both all candidates for House and Senate. We'll start with Tracy Kalish this time, and then we'll come my way, and then I'll go back to Ted, and then we'll run this side. Some would like to see homeschoolers be held to the testing and government standards. What is your position on this?
No, no, and no, absolutely not. We enjoy some of the best homeschooling laws in the country. And, parents are actually coming here to Idaho because they want the freedom to educate their children in the method and manner that they see fit. They don't want to be subject to government regulation. They don't want to be subject to government oversight or curriculum requirements or having to meet standardized testing or any of those things. So I do absolutely not support registration of students, for homeschooling. I've been very strong on that issue. We need to ensure that parents are in control of the homeschool environment, and our laws actually protect that as well. So I would not support anything that would require or put any requirements, including making parents have to pass, some type of teaching credential to teach in their home. So we want to ensure that we are protecting homeschoolers.
Thank you. I am absolutely opposed to putting government mandates on any homeschooling lessons there. Now, I certainly think that there can be positive things done, at the homeschool, at the public schools, at charter schools, and that you can give best practices there. But 100%, it's not going to be a licensing. It's not going to be any requirements there. And I think that's one thing. And we've all talked about school choice here. I think that's something that also needs to be discussed a lot in promoting school choice, is making sure that it's not the elephant's nose under the tent, where all of a sudden it's going to become regulation of the charter schools, of the private schools, of these different types of schools, that the taxpayers have a right to expect if their public dollars are going towards the education. There are minimum performances, but homeschooling would not be required to accept those dollars, and homeschooling would not be required for licensing or anything like that. But I would say the government, in the regulations or in the laws that would be passed, you have to make sure government's not necessarily collecting a bunch of information on the students, and government is not infringing on the education.
2 words: hands off. Hands off our homeschoolers. I've been a homeschooler. I've been a charter schooler. I've been a private schooler. I've been a public schooler. My kids have gone through it all, six kids. And I am adamant that there is absolutely no regulation on our kids when they are being homeschooled. As a matter of fact, we are seeing an increase in the percentage of kids that are being homeschooled, and good for us. Good for us. Even before the pandemic, the year before the pandemic, we went from 8% of our kids that were ages for K through 18, K through 12, were being homeschooled. We saw that 20 increase to 10%, from percent to percent. There is a demand. Parents want to be more engaged and involved in their kids' education. They want to be directing it, and it is a hands-off. Now, in terms of charter school, private school, and homeschool, we need to empower parents to be making those choices. We need to put parents back in the driver's seat of their kids' education, and that begins with homeschool.
I'm sorry. I'm missing everybody.
Well, I agree 100%. Government should not have any input on the homeschoolers. And the Idaho law, when I researched it, and 4 years ago, it is the best in the country. And homeschooling basically only happens in America and Australia. So it's a very unique opportunity here. Idaho is unique across the planet, what we do. I had a nice meet and greet with a bunch of homeschooling mothers, and they told me what their concerns were. No registration. This one from California said, be registered, California said, oh, we can't provide any more registration, so there's no more homeschooling. So you can't have a license. All these things were going on. Very clear why they don't want registration. Very clear they don't want any government interference at all. And since my wife is a teacher, I hear what goes on in the public schools. Yeah, you need to take care of your kids at home. I understand. You need to control their curriculums. I get it, 100%. It's just crazy in some of these places. So let these parents run it. Let them do what they need to do. That's the way. That's the way to go.
Best when she said no, no, no. That's pretty much how I feel about the government getting back involved or trying to get involved into our homeschooling. The biggest issue for me is one. I guess I should say I commend all the moms that would actually, or the dads that would actually stay home with their kids and do that. That is a mass amount of work, and I appreciate for all the people that are doing that. But we have to look at why we're seeing such an exodus in our state and people going to homeschools. I mean, it is not because that's what they want overall. A lot of them actually, the reason they've chose that was because of how poorly our school systems are doing right now. And I think that's what we need to put our focus on right now, and let them do the homeschool thing. We should no regulations, but we need to put our focus on what we're actually failing at and what we're actually our mission to try to achieve here as a state in our education system. Thank you.
We'll pass it down to Mr. Groh.
Thank you. I attended a major private university, graduated from there, and they made the decision not to take any federal money, because once you take federal money, you get federal control. Again, I've talked about homeschooling and how we've been in private schools. Private schools are very expensive, but very effective. Some would like to really push heavily to get state money going to private schools. If you do that, I'm not against that necessarily, but you have to recognize that if you do that, you risk having some state control that would come along with that. So there's a balance between complete independence in a private school, which is great. You can teach what you want, do what you want, and nobody's going to bug you about it. But if you want money coming that direction, because these parents are paying state taxes and then also having to fund their private education, then just be careful and recognize that there may be some state controls that would come along with that.
I'm very supportive of homeschooling. I'm not in favor of any regulation of homeschooling. If we were to turn this thing around as far as return to limited government, we're going to look back to about the 1980s when homeschooling really started in Idaho. Prior to that time, it was illegal. There was a family in New Plymouth that homeschooled and they were arrested. I think they died while in jail. The legislature put a legal structure in place saying this is your right, God-given right to oversee the education of your children. And so from then, it's taught us a couple of things. One, that parents who are involved with their kids can do as good or better than an expert or institution, a state institution, which is really an important thing. We don't have to trust experts to get some of these things done. So I would be opposed to regulating homeschoolers.
Thank you. We'll draw the next question over to the sheriff candidates. We'll start with Mr. Travell. You'll be fine. How can law enforcement balance the need to protect children from abuse and neglect while respecting the sanctity of the family?
Well, when you seize a child, for example, and that's the proper word, seize a child, that's a very important consideration when an officer is looking at the situation, and it needs to err on the side of family and freedom. It's such a delicate topic, and is there a need sometimes to seize a child? Yes, but there's also a need for the highest level of scrutiny, and the sheriff's office, in my opinion, is in a position as the only elected law enforcement officer to add an extra layer of scrutiny in those situations where that's being considered the seizure of a child. So we want to make certain that imminent danger is really there. Otherwise, err on the side of family and freedom. We don't want a police state. We want to protect our children. Yes, we need to protect the rights of families. And so it's a very careful, it's very sensitive topic, but we don't want to go in with just emotion. We need to look at facts and evidence. Imminent is a specific word, and it needs to mean something when officers are looking at a child in real time.
I'll just piggyback off that because much of what Doug says is true. We do investigations, thousands of them every year. We do take children from homes because of very imminent safety measures. It is called imminent danger. The code says imminent danger. So we have to follow that rule. It's not something we take lightly. It has to come from experienced detectives that do great detective work and that follow the facts and don't get wrapped up into what they feel emotionally. And our detectives do a very good job. Though we do thousands of those investigations every year, we take very few children out of the home. And it goes through the court process. We've never gone to court and had a shelter care hearing judge say, you know what, you did the wrong thing. And it's not here, the facts are not here, and your investigation was poor. We have always prevailed because we're very selective and very careful about what children we take out of homes. You can be in the face of a family.
Thank you. This will be our final question from the audience because we still have a little bit of the program to do, and we want to give our candidates enough to answer the last question. So the last question from the audience, and this is for the House and the Senate once again. We'll start with Mr. Olson this time. Other than providing direct tax refunds, what would you do with the current fiscal year revenue surplus, which is currently nearing $1.3 billion?
Thank you very much. I think I made it very clear I would not be in favor of tax refunds for past years. I think that is just poor tax planning on the government's part and for the private individuals. I don't think we should be doing handouts like that, but I would absolutely be in favor in prospective tax relief. Idaho is 17th in the nation in business tax competitiveness, according to the Tax Foundation. At least they're in the top half. However, you look at every state around us, the only less competitive state is Oregon. What all the top 10 states share, except for two of them, that's Utah and I believe Wyoming, is that they do not have one of the major taxes. So that looks at either your sales tax, your income tax, or even what we're looking at here in Idaho, the property taxes. I would want in particular the property tax or the income tax there, not just incremental relief, but really transformational change there to one of those. Either you get rid of the property taxes on the primary residences like was discussed, or you go ahead and look at actually getting rid of the income taxes here in Idaho. But you make sure that the relief that you're doing is prospective, and then also you make sure you're not going to be putting the state in the red. You have to make sure these are dollars that are continuing to come in. These aren't just federal relief dollars.
Grab the mic and eat it from him. Look, property taxes is one of the most un-American things we do in this country, in this state. It is simply un-American that we cannot truly own the shelter over our own heads. So I believe that we can and should do more in terms of property tax relief. You've seen us take swipes at it. We have wanted to be more aggressive, and I believe you will see that in the upcoming legislative session, that we will absolutely be more aggressive in terms of that property tax. It is also impacted by our local government, and so we will work carefully with that local government. Now, we have the room, I believe, to do seismic change in terms of our sales tax and our income tax. We need to see that continue to go down. Going in the right direction, folks, but it's not quickly enough. And when we see these large surpluses over and over, we know that not only is a surplus happening, but there are budgets that we need to be reducing as well. So we need to be reducing spending. I do believe that there is more room to be doing that, both in the spending side and
pass it down to Mr. Hill.
Well, whenever I see a big surplus, it's always nice to have a rebate. And that's a great thing. But I think having 1.5 billion or 1.3 billion ready, I would say invested in infrastructure. I was aware of a story that Highway 16 had the opportunity to go through here about 15 years ago. It would have cost a couple $1 million. We're not going to spend any money on it. Now it's going to be, I don't know. 20, 100, whatever, insane. So if you make these strategic moves, make these investments, it'll reduce taxes in the future, but we don't have to spend ridiculous amount of money widening roads and doing these other things. If we made these investments in the past, we wouldn't be spending the ridiculous amount of money we're doing now. Plan strategically, take that money and invest it in your infrastructure, and it will pay off dramatically. That would be what I'd want to do with any surplus. If we have surpluses continuing, then we're obviously taxing too much. Everything's saying about property tax and everything, absolutely. Don't waste this money. I've seen that happen in businesses and in the military and everything. Take advantage of this and do it in infrastructure, and you'll get a great payout.
Well, we do have habitual surpluses that seem to be happening, which tells me that we are overtaxing. So we need to ensure that the folks that sit on JFAC are actually taking the time to ensure that they are not setting budgets that continually exceeds our starting point from last year. Let's add 3% and just continue to grow and grow this government monstrosity that we have. So why did we have 1.9 surplus last year? And why are we already on target to have a 1.3 billion surplus this year? Because we're overtaxing, and we need to return that money back to the people. You know, I also appreciate the fact that it was mentioned that the property tax is probably one of the most un-American things that we do, and I do agree with that as well. It is, to me, just incredible that you could pay off a home and own a home, but you never really have to, you never end paying the government for it, right? You got to continue to pay those property taxes or your home can be seized. You know, we need to get that under control, and primarily because we're seeing right now, just because property values are increasing and so many people are moving here, we're seeing just exponential revenue or, you know, taxes on the home. So we need to get that under control.
Thank you.
So I actually reached out to several legislators when I found out that we had a $1.9 billion property tax, and was frustrated and I couldn't get exactly a direct answer from any of them of how they actually ended up with a $1.9 billion surplus. But I did propose a question that we could, with the fuel the way it's going, that to get rid of the sales tax on fuel to try to get us a little bit more economical there. And that's when they had told me they had already spent it. It was already gone. That's when I think I mentioned earlier, I dug down. I've actually spent the last several months now actually trying to find out what truly they spend all the money on. And I can't figure it out. I mean, that's a massive amount of money. They did give a portion of it back, but even for a lot of people that I've only talked to, I think 5 people out of all that said they've actually got something back. So I think they broke the system on giving it back to us as well. But like Mike had said, I think the big problem is we've got to actually deal with. Sorry, thank you.
You want to visit with me after the session? I'll tell you exactly how we spent the 1.3 million. It was one-time money was there. You have to be really careful you don't do a permanent reduction in the taxation system when you have one-time money. We'll have a recession. We always have them. And the worst thing in the world would be to reduce everything and give everybody all these breaks, and then all of a sudden we have to start raising taxes during a recession. We do not want that to happen. I'll tell you later, I'll talk to anybody and tell you how we spent that money. But let me tell you how we should spend the current surplus that we're getting. Number one, transportation. We spent $350 million of our last year's budget, excess on that. We need to spend more on transportation. Infrastructure is our biggest deal. That is one-time money. You can make a huge difference. Also, property tax. Well, property tax is the worst tax we have. You only pay income tax if you get an income. You only pay sales tax if you buy something. Property tax, you sit in your house and you pay tax. You never get your home paid for.
Thank you.
So the question was, what should we do with 1.3 billion? A couple of comments. I was in the legislature in 2009 when we had a 23% reduction in revenue. And Governor Otter at the time wisely said we weren't going to raise taxes. So I think these budget surpluses are unprecedented. I'm not sure they'll continue. The question is, what should we do with it? One of the things we should consider is, because we need to build a lot of new schools, is creating some sort of a revolving fund that would allow us to reduce the interest rate on the loans that are going to be required. there's a good faith effort bill that's out there that could address some of the concerns of these high-growing communities, especially when it comes to building schools. The other thing is we can put more money into infrastructure.
Thank you. So the final question that we have for all the candidates, and we're going to give each candidate 60 seconds to answer this question. We're going to start with the sheriff candidates first. Mr. Trabel, we'll start with you first, and then we'll go to Mr. Clifford. And then this question is for all of you, though. But we'll start with the sheriff candidates first. Oh, I'm sorry, 2 minutes. You have 2 minutes for this. My apologies. Here we go. Why should voters vote for you? Or you can choose any closing remark.
Well, I think I'm a unique blend, frankly. I have the real and proven law enforcement experience, crime fighting experience, and also have a constitutional lens. I think real practical and effective law enforcement background, the moral and physical courage to lead and to fight crime and to fight for your individual liberties. You look at the English language, the word I, it's always capital, no matter where it is in a sentence or paragraph. And that's important to note because you look at the purpose of government is to secure our God-given rights of the individual. And so you need a sheriff who has that lens, who understands that each of you has God-given rights. And so it's not enough to fight crime. I have that background. You can look me up on my website, dougfrederickcounty.com. I packed the gear to deliver effective law enforcement to defend our quality of life, but I also have the constitutional lens and the reverence for our founding and the understanding of our ethos. And it's so important when we're in the midst of this Marxist revolution. We are in a cultural revolution, a Maoist revolution in this country. It's very important that your sheriff understands how to fight crime, yes, but also understand what his oath means and that he will interpose on your behalf. So as I say, I'm a unique blend. I have a genuine, proven record, history, career of fighting crime. I'm highly decorated. I have the medals on the wall and the commendations that prove where I've been and what I've done. This is not a time, place to be humble. I am a very experienced law enforcement officer, but I also have the intellect and education and reverence for our founding and the courage, moral and physical, to stand up for your individual rights in the midst of this Marxist revolution. I'll push back on the war cops, and I'll defend your God-given rights.
So I want everybody in here to think about the last time they had an interaction with the Ada County Sheriff's Office. Eagle Police is Ada County Sheriff's Office. I want you to think about the culture of what the Ada County Sheriff's Office is. I've been there for almost 22 years, and I'm really proud of our culture. Our culture is service. It is proactivity. And that is those are the things that I've always said are so great about us. We are the most proactive agency here in the state of Idaho. I will say that in front of any chief of police, that right to their face. So when you think about we need a change in culture, we need more proactive cops, you're seeing a culture that's the best in this valley. You're seeing happy employees that deliver appropriate service to you for the reasons you came to this place, right? I don't know why I keep hearing about change of the Ada County Sheriff's Office. I've been here through the growth. I've been here, I've risen through the ranks. And yes, rank does not equal leadership, but I've had those ranks because of my leadership. I have the support of every mayor in the Ada County cities, except for one. You could probably guess who that is. But every mayor has endorsed me to say we want him to be our sheriff. The Ada County Sheriff's Employees Association has said we want him to be our sheriff. The Fraternal Order of Police has said we want Matt Clifford to be our sheriff because I deliver that service. I do all those things. I've also launched. I think I would be good, but it is not a top competition. He's right. It's not a top cop competition. Can you manage tens of millions of dollar budget? Can you make sure you protect people's rights? Can you make sure that you have the services available to provide you with public safety? And I'm telling you, I've been here through when Eagle was a town where you didn't even go unless you needed to buy feed. And now look at it. I come here.
We'll turn our attention now to the District B, and we'll let Mr. Tanner go first.
So for me, one of the biggest things why you should vote for me is because I believe this is your seat. I've tried being extremely transparent with that. My phone number is been listed out on my websites. I've sent it out personally through mailers. I've got my cards with it on there, and I've answered and replied to every single person that's called me. This is we're supposed to be listening to you. This isn't just you elect somebody and they sit up there and they do their things, and then every 2 years they come back and they listen to you for a brief moment and then they go back away. Throughout their legislation time, they should be continually in contact with you. I have answered every email as well, but for me, that is a big thing, and I think that's what's been frustrating for me with a lot of legislators. There's some that are really good at it, and there's some that are not, and besides that, it's freedom, it's our liberties, and when we see them pushing bills that whether we disagree with them or not, we should have that voice. But I will close with the last part of what I was trying to get out earlier. So this has kind of hit me home really hard when COVID went on. It was Ben Franklin's comment, Benjamin Franklin. So if you're willing to give up your liberties for safety, you deserve neither liberty nor safety. And so often we were so quick to listen and to give up all of our freedoms for this COVID thing. And it was really up to our legislators to really fight for us and to keep that, to make sure our liberties were not being infringed. I felt like they failed tremendously on that. And then they would pass the bill later on down the road after we were infringed upon, but they could have stopped this before it ever got there. So I thank you, and I appreciate you guys all coming out.
Okay, can you hear me? Start over, Cindy. Start over. I'm really tempted to stand up, and I'm okay if you cut off my face because I want to look you in the eyes, because I am looking around this room and I see people that have been in the trenches with me on issue after issue. You know me and you know what I'm about. I have a proven track record of fighting for you because you've been there with me. So this is not my seat. This is your seat. And I have appreciated that you'd be in there fighting with me. Now, we have fought some tough things. This infringement of our freedoms, it has been unprecedented. The intrusion of our government has been unprecedented, both again at the federal level and at the state level. And our hands have been tied in more ways than one in terms of what we can do. But when we have been given the opportunity and when we have fought to get back into session, you have seen me bring bill after bill and protecting your freedoms and expanding those freedoms and playing defensively. We have had to play defensively in terms of protecting our families and our kids as well, not only from these mandates, but from this woke national agenda that is coming into our schools and into our homes. You saw me bring the library bill, making sure that we get this smut out of the minor sections of our libraries. That is the kind of legislation that you have seen me bring. School choice, I was on the front lines of that bill trying to get the money to follow the child, because you know what is best for your child in education. You know what best fits your child's needs, and we ought to have that money at the state level follow your child so that you can be the decision maker. And we have to continue to play defensively as we protect your freedoms and your liberties. So it's about family, faith, and freedom for me.
Thank you. We'll pass that down to Mr. Hill. We'll start with District A with Mr. Hill.
I think what I bring is a certain skill set. When I look at my fellow, actually these esteemed senators and representatives, and I listen to them and how important it is to be a team player. And as a freshman, if I come in there, I have to understand this is a team exercise. Mr. Groh talked to me about this. You have to have relationships. You gotta listen. You gotta learn. And I think with the skill set I've had, I've been very adaptive in my career. You have to become an expert quickly on everything, battle space, weapons, whatever it is. I became an expert rapidly. There will be challenges we're going to face. And what I learned in my last job, there are some challenges that would be shocking, what people would know what's coming. from artificial intelligence to whatever. And it's going to be something completely different and completely new. We're going to have different visions and different experiences, and definitely going to have to be very adaptive. There are going to be some serious challenges. So I'm ready to adapt. I'm ready to listen. I'm ready to become a team player. I'm ready to work with these groups, make things happen, and I'm going to listen to my constituents and do what they want and listen to them. That will be what my objective will be.
I'm going to stand up as well. So this seat, A seat, is an interesting seat. You do not have an incumbent. So you don't have a record that you can gauge any of us that are sitting here and they're vying for this position. But you do with me. I've actually been out there fighting, and it started a couple years ago here in the city of Eagle when the city of Eagle was completely under Democrat control and nobody knew that that was going on. We forged a group of people that came together and we took back our city. We replaced the Democrats in 2019 and we finished it off here this last election cycle. So I have a proven record of going against the Democrats. In fact, I will tell you, and I'm very disappointed to say this, but one of the major opponents that we ensured did not come into the mayoral office has actively been working with Ted Hill, which has been so disappointing to see. He's actually supported his campaign as well. In addition to that, we actually well, that's a record. That is an actual record. It's a
No comments, please.
So there are campaign finance reports, and those reports are important because they tell you, the voter, there's a reason why the Secretary of State requires reporting so that you know who's sowing into campaigns. I've not taken any money whatsoever from any PACs. I've not taken any money from special interest groups. I've not taken money from outside California. I've not taken any money from legislators. We do have some legislators, though, here in this state that are also supporting some of the candidates up here. And they want to continue to their more establishment agenda. And I will tell you candidly that I have been pretty much beaten up by the left here. I've been beaten up by the establishment as well, because I have been fighting for your rights. I'm currently serving as your Ada County Republican State Committee woman. In addition to that, I have been fighting for our vaccine mandates or protection from vaccine mandates and some of these other.
All right, thank you. Thank you, everybody. I've already told you the things I absolutely want to get out there and do, and I can tell you it is about building relationships. If you want to be able to get stuff done at the legislature, you need to be able to work with your colleagues there in the House, in the Senate. You even need to talk to the executive branch and be able to work with them, because the legislation has to go through each body there and needs to be signed by the governor. So I can tell you, I will absolutely work on relationships there to get forward lower taxes, lower tax rates, simple taxes, neutral taxes. We're not going to be doing any of these $350 million tax rebate checks that we sent for past year's tax returns. And what I've been doing right now is I haven't been talking to the other legislators. I haven't been going to the House right now. I haven't been going to the Senate right now, because that is not what's needed. What's needed is building relationships with the voters. So I have been out there hitting the ground. I have knocked on over 2,000 doors. I have spoke to many of the constituents in this room and outside of this room in both Eagle and in Emmett. I'm even out there in Sweet. And I've been trying to really make my way around there. And I can tell you, I'm not looking to go here to represent anybody else's interests but yours. I've got, friends, family, coworkers, colleagues. I told you I have a business. We operate in 10 different states. I had friends there donate, but I am largely self-funded. I'm putting in my own money here, so nobody is able to buy me. Nobody's able to buy my vote. I'm absolutely going to be looking for tax reform, looking for regulatory reform, and looking for school choice reform. And I can tell you, I know how to get this done. Did my master's in tax law at Georgetown, worked at the Big Four, worked at EY. I know working in large organizations can be complicated, but as long as you have the end in sight, you're going to be able to make it happen. Now, one thing people say, how can I run the business and do this? Well, I would say that to everybody when they'd ask.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Appreciate that.
Is this on? Thank you. I want you to know that when I ran 4 years ago, people said, why do you want to do this? And I said, because I'm born and raised in Idaho, I've got most of my family and grandkids and kids here in this valley. I want to keep Idaho, Idaho. This is why people are moving to this state, is because of the values we have right here. And I plan to continue defending those values. I'm endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police, the firefighters. Idaho Chooses Life. I'm an active pro Second Amendment defendant. I believe we need to defend our values. We need to protect our children's education, but also allow for home education, private education, and public schools. Transportation has got to continue to be a focus here. Our infrastructure, these people are going to keep coming. They're going to keep coming here. We've got to make sure that when they do, that our valley can receive them in a proper manner. Property taxes, we've got to fix that. Again, income tax, you pay it if you make income. Sales tax, you pay it if you buy something. Property tax, you have to pay it if you sit in your home every day doing nothing. That is the worst tax we have. We will work, I will continue to work as I have been with the mayor here, mayor in Star, Mayor Eagle, talk to the mayor in Meridian. We're now going to engage in Emmett and make sure that we work with the Association of Cities and Counties and legislators as a team and work with business to do what's best for the homeowners that are being overly taxed here in this valley. Thank you. I'd like your vote.
Thank you. My name is Stephen Thane, and I'd like your vote also. Enjoy serving with Senator Grow. It's too bad you guys have a choice. I did want to point out that Caleb Huberry, who is also running for House Seat A, got ill tonight. He really wanted to be here but could not come. Why should you vote for me? I'm a unique Republican. The whole time I've been in the legislature, 16 years, which I haven't had the support of the IEA or the state board or the governor's office or the conservatives or liberals or pretty much anybody, I've still gotten things done. And I focused on three important issues that Republicans don't focus on. Their education, healthcare, and poverty. I spent most of my time on education because that's the most important one. But until we start dealing with those three issues, which are the most expensive ones in the state, and we make policies that reduce those costs, it doesn't matter how much we talk about how we're going to cut taxes. We need to change the culture of those programs. And I'm the only Republican that really actively works in those areas. And how I'm trying to do it is by re-enthroning the value of the family and having families solve their own problems instead of having state programs that subsidize families. So my name is Stephen Thane. I'd appreciate your vote. And my wife is back there. Thank you. And it's such a pleasure visiting with all of you tonight.
Thank you very much. At this time, we'd like to thank all the candidates not being here. I've personally been up here answering questions like these, and just putting their name on the ballot as a nominee. It just shows who they are in their own community. So, big round of applause for all our candidates tonight. Now, the candidates will remain at the forum, and you'll get a chance to talk to them. And some of them have brought some material over here to my right. So if you want to pick up some material on the candidates, feel free to do that and ask them the questions that maybe didn't get asked tonight. We'd invite all of you to visit tonight's video on Eagle or Meridian Chamber Facebook pages or YouTube. The Chamber would the Eagle Chamber of Commerce wants to thank you, the audience, and all the people that sent in questions this evening to allow us to have this forum and get those answers that we wanted to hear from the candidates. We greatly appreciate Eagle High School for the opportunity to use their facility. We can't thank them enough. A special thank you to our friends at the Meridian Chamber. They actually brought the equipment, the AV equipment, and allowed us to go live tonight. And so thank you, Meridian Chamber. We appreciate you. We love you for doing what you did for us tonight. We hope tonight's forum helped all of you maybe answer some questions. Just remember, your vote does count. So please, I think it's May 17th, next week, is the voting. And I think early voting, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Mayor, is 13th, Friday. Early voting in Eagle, if you're an Eagle resident at City Hall, there'll be early voting on the 13th. Thank you very much. Have a great evening. God bless you all.